Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Revamped Founder. In this episode, we have Elston Baretto with us. He's the founder of Tiny.host, which he has scaled to over 10,000 plus dollars in MRR, and he's an incredible guy. This is a fantastic conversation. Do listen to it till the end. Thank you. So, hey Elston, how are you?
Hey Advik, I'm good, thanks. Thanks for having me on this podcast.
Yep, it's my pleasure. So, before we get started with all the questions and everything, can you give a little introduction of yourself to the
Yeah,
viewers or the listeners?
of course. Yeah. So my name is Philip Baretto. You can find me on _Baretto on Twitter, and I'm basically the founder of a micro SaaS platform called Tiny.host. And I'm a software engineer by profession. Have worked in a few big companies in finance, as well as had experience with previous startups. But most recently, towards the end of 2019, I launched TinyHost, and basically launched it as a marketing experiment to help me, build a product, but actually market and grow it. And since
Yeah.
then, we've done really well. We've just hit 10K MRR, and growing very,
Mhm.
very fast. And yeah, I'm here to talk about basically my journey and help other founders with a similar story.
Yeah, that's a pretty good introduction. So let's talk about Tiny a little bit.
Sure.
So, how would you explain Tiny to an absolute beginner? Like, what is it?
Yeah, so
Simplest way
Tiny
to describe.
is essentially the simplest way to share your work online. We were originally the simplest way to share your HTML online, but we've
Yeah.
expanded to different file types. And the problem we're solving is that it's too difficult, I think, to share content on the internet. And by sharing, I mean hosting it, putting it online, getting a link, and being able to send that to many people out there. So we are web hosting for non-technical users,
Yeah.
and we are capturing that niche where there are people that want to put a PDF online, or they have a zip file, or they've created some kind of template, or exported something from whatever file format to HTML, and need to put that online on a link so that they can take that link and share it. More recently, we had a designer who exported a PSD Photoshop file to HTML, and wanted somewhere to put that online and send that link as part of an email. So we fit a lot of,
Yeah.
very niche use cases, but we're focusing on a hosting market that was not really catered for, because a lot of the hosting solutions out there are very technical and directed towards technical users and companies.
Yeah. So is it like Netlify or Versal? Like a part of it?
Yeah, so we are we're not that different, in a sense that we are fundamentally a hosting company. However, Netlify and
Yeah.
Vercel, if you look at their target market and the audience, it's very technical. It's designed for engineers.
Yeah.
It's designed for engineering teams and companies and startups. So Netlify and Vercel have a feature which essentially copies, or has exactly what we have in terms of drag and drop web hosting, but we are a lot simpler, a lot more basic, and a lot more easier to use than Netlify and Vercel, which basically caters for specific use cases. And these use cases don't overlap with Netlify and Vercel. So, for example, no one, someone from marketing would not use Netlify or Vercel to host a PDF brochure or an e-digital kind of leaflet, but they would use us because we're a lot simpler, and easy to
Yeah.
use. So you can use Netlify and Vercel to do that, but it'll be very rare and difficult. And I'm not sure how someone, why someone would go through all those loopholes to achieve that. We are a lot simpler version of the hosting. And essentially we're a static web host, right? So
Yeah.
Netlify and Vercel provide full suite hosting. So you can host PHP, backend servers, and they have a lot of features. We're very focused on offering just static hosting, file hosting, but rendering documents in the browser. We're not just, putting a link out there for somebody to download and then view it on the device. We're focused on really, rendering that document in your browser, so that you can really showcase it the best way.
Oh, Vercel and Netlify, they're similar to the static web hosting part of Tiny. So
Yeah.
what about the PDF and the documents like hosting part? What companies or what people are doing that right now? Who's doing that?
Yeah, I mean, there's no direct competitor to Tiny that we've found. I think there are lots of different providers that, offer hosting for specific, documents. So for PDFs, there's something called like pdfhost.io. I think there's
Yeah,
Doctroid, and they're designed
yeah,
just for PDFs.
yeah.
Um,
So you have combined Vercel and kind of like some part of
yeah,
Vercel and Netlify and some part of
exactly. Yeah. So we're a combination of, few products
yeah,
to achieve, the bigger goal is to help people host anything online. And right now, with just PDF, zip files, and HTML, but we will be expanding that offering soon.
what are you think of expanding to? What kind of?
It's Yeah, it really depends on what demand there is for different file types. But there are options, for example, to host, images, other types of documents like Word documents, PowerPoints, etc. Um, so PDF is the world's most popular file format, and
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons we launched that as the first file format after HTML and zip files. But yeah, but one day we'd like to be that go-to solution where you have a file and you want to put it on the internet. You think of us.
yeah. So who is your average user? Like what kind of people use your product?
On a very high level, it's non-technical users.
Yeah,
So people not familiar with programming or with the web, um, and but they want to get a link, basically put their file or document or web template online. Um, that could be broken down into a few different segments. So we do have a lot of users from marketing, so people who design e-digital kind of PDFs, brochures, etc. We have a lot of students who are learning to code, so their goal is to be more technical, but they're not as
yeah,
technical as they'd like to be right now. They don't understand anything about hosting. They're just learning HTML, CSS, and they want somewhere where they can showcase their work. We're very popular with them. We have a lot of users from the crypto space who are kind of putting up white papers and helping people,
yeah,
yeah, basically, read about them. We have some interesting use cases like hospitality, where
yeah,
people just putting up restaurant menus, they need to update the menus, or we have a link online where people can view it. Um, Digital artists are there as well. So people who create art using HTML, the JavaScript kind of Canvas API, etc.
yeah,
And yeah, have a HTML asset they want to host out there. So it's quite varied. We're quite broad, but the the overarching kind of common characteristic between all of them is they're very low technical, no code kind of users.
yeah. Yes, that's so you have to cater to all kind of users. Like, you have to cater to technical user also and non-technical technology?
Yeah, I think we're predominantly non-technical. I'd say 80% non-technical, but there are,
Yeah,
some people who are technical,
yeah,
and know how to, host things themselves, use GitHub pages or Vercel or AWS. But because we're just a lot quicker, simpler, and faster to get things online, they choose us sometimes.
but Tiny is built on top of AWS, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, that's correct. So underlying, we use S3 and AWS services.
Mm,
Um, and yeah, I mean, anyone can go and configure and set up everything yourself that way. But it is very time consuming. You need the knowledge, you need to know how to configure things, and that's one of the reasons, I set up Tiny, because I think if you know how to configure things, and if you know how to um basically set this up, it's actually quite fast. But nobody has
yeah.
ever, automated in the way that it should be. So that's kind of Tiny. It's a very simple, user-friendly um technology on top of AWS to basically make it more accessible to more
Yeah.
users.
So right now you are at 10,000 MRR.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. So what? So are you working on this alone, or do you have a team or something?
Yeah, I'm pretty much basically just a solo founder. Um,
Yeah.
so it's a solo project for a while, but I guess in the past 12 to 18 months, we've we've kind of I've hired some consultants and freelancers. So there's a small team around me that help with certain things, because there's a lot of things we need to kind of look after right now. But we don't have any full-time employees at the moment. Um, I'm not against that. It's just haven't needed that, right? And also didn't have resources to hire that. But it's just me as a full-time employee at the moment.
So on a monthly basis, like out of the 10,000 MRR,
Yeah.
what are your expenditures? Like the company's expenditure.
The company's expenditures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's divided across a few things. So there are tools that we pay for. They're super important to us. Things like Hrefs, support chat tools, there's server costs and all these kind of things. But the bulk of the expenditures goes towards some of our freelancers. So we have a marketing budget, which basically means we have a content writer, a marketing consultant, as well as a SEO kind of analyst. And together that really is like a biggest kind of cost, which basically helps us grow, figure out, where we should invest our time, how do we reach more users, and what kind of audience do we target, and where, which platforms. Um, and then we have a part-time developer, and so that he basically helps
Yeah.
us build more features, expand the product in a different way. Um, and yeah, those are kind of the main costs that we run on a monthly basis that we invest in.
Mm. So getting to 10,000 MRR, according to you, what was the toughest thing till now? I mean, there's a lot of things ahead in the future, but till now, what was the toughest thing?
From 0 to 10K,
Yeah.
I think that the toughest thing is definitely your first few dollars, your first 100, first 1,000, mainly because you have this product which is an idea in your head. You don't really know what it is, if people want it, where to really post about it, where to market it. There's so many unknowns and so many just things you're unsure of, that
Yeah.
you just have to keep trying, and you're basically just like punching into the darkness to try and figure out which will kind of stick. And so once you've figured out how to get your first few customers, that people want it, things start to get easier. And having a few customers is good, but then figuring out how to repeat that, how to find more of these customers is also more important. So it definitely gets easier and it snowballs very quickly. You've probably seen with a lot of other SaaS products that there's a timeline that shows like the 0 to 1,000
Yeah.
is MRR is probably is the longest period. Um,
Yeah.
and then it gets quicker and quicker after that. So the second hardest thing I think is scaling and growing, and it's not hard as much as just very boring and monotonous that people may see.
Yeah.
Because you're just doing you're basically just doing what you did before, but you're 10xing that. You're doing more of it. Um, and that's not very interesting a lot of times. The interesting part is, launching the product, building it, adding features, etc. But doing more of what is working is what's going to help you grow from 10 to 100 or whatever K from that level. So the hardest part is definitely the first K, I think, and figuring out what your product really is and why it exists and how you need to evolve it.
Yeah. So, like talking about your first point, from that 0 to 1K, how did you figure out everything while in the process? Like, what resources did you use to learn new things or analyze things? What,
Yeah.
kind of,
So from the 0 to a few hundred, I've
yeah,
launched a few products in the past, so I basically had some experience knowing, what works in really early days.
yeah,
And I made it really clear to myself that I only want to build set a basically a very strict timeline to when I ship this product. Um, because I've made the mistakes a lot of founders have made and build stuff for too long. So I set like myself 1 month to build this part-time. I built a very basic version of it, shipped it in 1 month. You couldn't pay for a service. It took like, 15 minutes, I think, for something to go live. Um, but I launched it and I wanted to see, what people would use it for, and if it really is something useful. And I think one of the best communities early
yeah,
to use early for that kind of stage is Reddit. So I think we got our first like 200 users. These weren't paying because we didn't even have a plan to pay or charge basically. And
yeah,
got a lot of feedback from the Reddits. There's tons of subreddits out there which you can post for entrepreneurship, SaaS, etc. I just post this anywhere and everywhere. And got as many people just to try it out, and see what is there. And from that point, the indie hacker community really helped basically figure out, more channels. We launched a product on a bit later. I got more feedback from lots of other people,
yeah,
and eventually added a payment kind of page, more features, figured out what, we need to charge for, and grew it from that point. But essentially the main growth came from SEO for us, and I think that's one of the most important things in your product
yeah,
growth journey is figuring out what is that single channel or distribution technique that's really going to propel your product. And but that took us about a year to find out. This is part-time, of course. That
yeah,
SEO was really gonna um take the product to the next level. And it still is one of the biggest generators of traffic for us right now. And it takes a long time to invest in. So, but figuring that out wasn't easy. And we tried loads of different things, right? For YouTube videos, Reddit, posting indie hackers, Slack communities,
yeah.
um, yeah, lots of things, as well as SEO. And then figured out what was actually sticking and helping us to grow.
All right. So, how did the product and launch go?
The product on launch.
Yeah,
That was no, they went pretty well, I think. When I launched it, I think I was speaking with it was the first few weeks of like a marketing consultant that I still work with. And so it was very structured compared with my previous launches. So basically knew what
yeah,
what was kind of a good day to post, how to write, the content, what images kind of put up, and also how to get a lot of momentum really early by like telling as many people as possible that you've got this product on launch out there. Um, so I don't remember where we finished. I think it was definitely the top 10. It wasn't like first, second, or third, anything high up there.
Yeah.
But that's where we really got our first, I think, two or three customers, which was very cool. And getting your first few customers is one of, I think, still the biggest milestone in your journey. There's nothing like finding out that
Yeah.
people want to pay for your product. So
Yeah.
even as I hit 10K MRR, it's look back to that first few kind of customers on Product Hunt, and that that energy that you get from that is very cool. So it did really well, I think, for our expectations. We didn't really, anticipate to be top product of the day or two or three, but it got us a really big spike of around, I think, I don't know, 1 to 2,000 visitors and our first few paying customers. So it really helped us in the early days to just get some momentum.
Yeah. So what else products have you worked on apart from Tiny?
I very early on launched a product called Mozi, Mozi. And that was kind of the first kind of startup I worked on straight out of university. And that was designed, it was basically a social planning app. That was designed to help friends figure out a good time to meet up, for dinner, for drinks, for whatever. Because we found scheduling a bit difficult. That was like a really good deep dive into what it takes to build a product, how you can fail, um, how not to spend 6 months to 8 months working on a product without shipping it and getting actual users on it. Um, how not to have too many people on the team. Um, but I mean, it did all right. Like I think we had around 5,000 downloads, which is pretty good for a first product. Eventually, when we launched it,
Yeah.
but it never got the momentum that it needed to turn into a proper product or a revenue channel.
Yep.
It was hard to make money off that. Um, I also was co-founder of a legal software company which still exists. And it's basically a product to help, lawyers track their time as well as
Yeah.
manage their products. That's actually headquartered in Mumbai, and
Uh-huh.
still exists today. And then there is a running app that was the product I launched before Tiny. Um, that was it was my personal project, where I basically developed
Yeah.
an Android app, and I wanted to make a simpler version of what existed on the App Store at that time.
Yeah.
So that's still around. It generates a few hundred, I think like $100 a month right now still. Um, but it's more of like a portfolio product. So I learned a lot from that, like how to really generate money for myself, how to market a little bit. Um, so I took those lessons and then applied it to Tiny, but then went further with Tiny after that. And yeah, grew it after that.
So, like, what was the biggest lesson which you learned from all of these products, which you applied to Tiny, and which has helped you in achieving this 10K MRR? If you put it
Yeah,
that.
I think it's something that everyone has heard about before and everyone knows, but people for some reason seem to neglect it or don't pay as much attention to it. But it is literally just marketing. Um,
Yeah.
I set Tiny up with the goal of I want to learn how to market this product, right? So I wanted to create a SaaS product, but also realize how to market it and get users on it. I mean, I had the skill set to build a lot of things by then, because I was a very senior engineer, but I never knew how to really get users and grow it that way. So marketing at a high level is literally the biggest lesson that if you launch anything, you need to figure out how to market and distribute it. I mean, People have told me that in the past, but it's kind of you don't put as much weight on it until you go through that kind of journey yourself. So learning how to market, learning how to distribute, learning how to get traffic to your landing page is the biggest, I think, driver of success of your platform. And going forward, if anyone has an idea or if I have a product idea, I'd always kind of consider from the start, like how do we market it, how do you distribute it, how are we going to get users on this? Not just like, is this a good idea? Because you can build a very basic product, but if you have a really good distribution channel and a marketing channel for it, it can be successful. But yeah, if you can build an amazing product, and if you can't figure out how to market it, it's not going to be a good business.
Yeah, for sure. If you have no users, then probably you have to work on your marketing a little bit.
Exactly.
Like you said that you rely heavily on SEO right now.
Yeah.
So what are some points which help you with SEO? And just an addition question. Do you think that virality is important, like in marketing? Do you think virality has any stand?
Yeah, I mean, I think virality is important and it can help, but you can't build your marketing strategy hoping that you'll go viral, because if it's only based on the chances you go viral, the chances are you'll fall flat very quickly. You can build virality into your product in certain ways. Like with Tiny, we're working on that more and more, because inherently we're viral is the sense that every time someone creates a link and they share it, it goes to a new set of eyes, and hopefully they come back to us.
Yeah,
But in terms of SEO, um, it's not difficult. It's very routine, very monotonous, and overlooked because it's not really interesting to a lot of people. There's a lot of buzzwords around SEO. There's a lot of people that can claim to do good SEO, but essentially SEO can be broken down into really good, content that's like blog up posts, articles, messaging on your landing page, but also targeted content. So tools like Hrefs, etc., can teach you about what you should write. So it's very important that when you write articles and posts and messaging, you figure out what you should write, what people are searching for, um, and produce high quality content, because at the end of the day, that's what Google really uses to categorize your website and figures out what people should see when they type in certain keywords. And then
yeah,
the other main thing is SEO takes time. It's when we launched our first kind of SEO initiatives, we didn't see any returns for about 6 months.
yeah,
Especially if you're a brand new domain and Google doesn't trust you. So it takes time to really get other websites, linking to you, Google to trust you, and then it to
yeah,
understand the content, understand, what you are about, right? So every website has a set of topics that Google understands that they're about, whether it's cars, hosting, music. And the more you write about this topic, the more Google learns that, this is what you're about. And then Google will, after trusting you, put you in the specific results when people search things like, I don't know, best small car in France, etc. But that's because you've
yeah,
also created content about cars in France, small cars in France, um, and those kind of things. So it's about really figuring out the right content to produce, but also having the patience to really wait for Google to start really ranking you and tweak on that. And a lot of people just don't, have the patience and have they want instant results, and that's not SEO. It's slow,
yeah,
but it's very organic, it's cheap and very recurring, in the sense
yeah,
that once you get that machine going, you get a lot of traffic very frequently, because Google trusts you, and Google trusts you and ranks you for things, you stay there for a very long time. So it's a very different channel to like paid ads or like, product hunt, because those are very big spikes, but it's not sustainable. SEO is evergreen and one of the really good kind of sources of traffic, especially if you're building a SaaS tool.
Yeah. So like you mentioned about the content, so how do you categorize the right type of content? So is it niche content or overall content about the specific industry?
Yeah, so I think niche content is a better way to go. And generally, when you're building something, niche is always the better way to go.
Yeah.
So with SEO, you have different types of difficulties in terms of keywords, right? So trying to rank for free web hosting is very, very difficult. But
Yeah.
trying to rank for um web hosting for marketers, for example, is actually a lot easier because it's niche. And so you want to
Yeah.
target more niche kind of topics and areas. And these tools like Hrefs and SEMrush will teach you about them and help you research them. But you want to target lots of them because SEO is also a bit of pot luck. It's again
Yeah.
shooting into the dark. You don't really know what Google will rank you for. The algorithm is, very private, and like a black box. So you've just got
Yeah.
to do as much as you can in all the different kind of niches and areas that relate to your overall topic of hosting or cars or music, etc. And then see what sticks really. I think a phrase I always use is marketing is like, sprinkling seeds all over the internet, most of which won't grow, but there'll be like
Yeah.
one or two which will really grow really well. And then you just keep watering them like very, very well, and that's your growth. That's how it works.
That's an incredible way to put it.
Yeah.
So, like my last question would be, which I ask to like every guest that comes on the podcast, what advice would you like to give to people who are just starting out on their journey and like who are just beginning on their journey of building? So what advice do you have for them?
Yeah. I mean the advice I'd give is nothing new. It's there and a lot of people say it. I think it's really about marketing in terms of what you're trying to build. So really add marketing to your plan very, very early on. Um, the one thing I would say with your product is you don't need to reinvent the wheel to be successful. You don't need to think about what is the
Yeah.
next Facebook. You don't need to think about what is the next, amazing AI tool. What do I do with this to be a big company? You just need to really take something existing and make it slightly better than it is for the modern day. And you can be very successful from that itself if your plan is to be bootstrap. And if your industry is big enough, you can grow that into a very, very big company. So if you look at Tiny, for example, a lot of people thought hosting was saturated, but I thought
Yeah.
it wasn't as simple as it could be. So I took the existing hosting industry, I simplified it, and I launched it. I didn't try to figure out, what the next LinkedIn is,
Yeah.
what the next Web3 kind of product should be. Um, and hosting ended up is $1 billion industry, right? So there's so much room to grow in this space, and it's growing, very quickly.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, launch early and really think about what you can improve as opposed to what needs to be brand new and innovative. And I also think there's a really big gap in the market for simplification of technology. So there's a
Yeah.
lot of tools out there, and we use a lot more tools in a day as we use, computers more. But it means that things are more complicated as and when they grow. So um there's a lot of opportunities in just simplifying our lives in technology, making things
Yeah.
easier, accessible, less clicks, less signups, less configuration. Just have a product do what a user needs it to be done in as little clicks as possible. And that's been our kind of, philosophy at Tiny. And I think a lot of other products kind of exist by just building things in that way. Because if you can save people, time or money, you can definitely build a very valuable business off the back of that.
Yeah.
So really think about that. Yeah.
That's really great advice. Yeah, I would consider that for sure. That's it from my side. Anything you'd like to say?
No. Other than feel free to reach out to me on Twitter if you need to any more advice. My DMs are always open. And yeah, I wish everyone the best of luck. I think it's a long journey, but it's very rewarding. And when you get there, keep working hard on your goals and have a long-term vision. And you can definitely achieve what you hope.